Welcome to the Food Junkies Podcast. Here, we aim to provide you with the experience, strength, and hope of professionals actively working on the front lines in the field of food addiction. The purpose of our show is to educate you, the listener, and increase overall awareness about food addiction as a disease with abstinence as the solution. Here, we talk about all things recovery. Most importantly, how to thrive rather than just survive. So stay positive, make a change for yourself, tell others about your change, and hopefully the message will spread.
Happy Friday, Food Junkies listeners. Molly here. I just want to remind you of a couple things. First, Clarissa and I are food addiction professionals and offer our services 100% online. Some of those services are groups we run several times a week to provide affordable treatment. These groups are Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and you can learn more at the Food Junkies Podcast website, foodjunkiespodcast.com, or by reaching out to Clarissa or myself via social media or email. Second, I'm still looking for people willing to share their stories for the Sweet Sobriety YouTube channel. Day 1 or day 1001, we want to hear your story. If you're interested, please consider scheduling an interview by going to the Food Junkies Podcast website or reaching out to me. Today, in this reprisal episode, Vera interviews a mentor and colleague, Esther Helga Gudmundsdottir. Esther is a pioneer in the field of food addiction treatment. She opened one of the first food addiction treatment programs in the world, MFM. The MFM program in Iceland has treated approximately 3,000 Icelanders. Her program gives them hope and the tools to achieve long-term recovery and is based on the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Esther also founded INFACT, an international training program for any type of professional willing to learn about food addiction and how to help those suffering from it. Finally, Esther is the executive director and chair of the Food Addiction Institute, an independent nonprofit organization whose mission is to support the healing of all food addicts. In this episode, Esther shares her personal and professional journey. She shares her message of hope. We learn more about the Food Addiction Institute. Esther talks about MFM, her Food Addiction Counseling Center. We learn about the International Food Addiction Counselor Training Program, or INFACT. She talks about the components of food addiction treatment that she feels are essential. We find out what Esther has had to change in how she treats food addiction. What are Esther's unique contributions to the food addiction field? What's next for Esther? And our signature question. All right, Vera, take it away and welcome Esther.
All right, welcome to the Food Junkies Summit. My name is Vera Tarman and I'm your host today for this interview. October is the month when we face sugar cravings head on, starting with Halloween and ending with New Year's Eve. Every day in October is a new challenge for many, so we decided to do this summit to speak to people who work in the field or are in recovery in the field, to learn from their wisdom as they get through this month and then the next few months after. Today, we are speaking to Esther Helga, who has a number of credentials behind her. The most important for our purposes, she is a food addict in recovery for over 18 years. She is creator, teacher, and administrator of the world-renowned International Food Addiction Training Program, otherwise known as INFACT. She also runs a food addiction treatment program in Iceland called MFM, and I'll let Esther give the actual words for that. And finally, she is the executive director and vice chair for the board of the Food Addiction Institute. So, hello, Esther. Have I missed anything?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, good. So thank you for being willing to speak to us today. And can you first start with telling us a little bit about your your story, your personal story of food addiction and your aha moment?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Vera. I'm excited about what you guys are doing, and I think it's very, very helpful for people wanting to get information and knowledge about recovery from this really deadly disease. And I can say that I was for sure in the grips of this in a severe way, and it took me almost to my death, this disease. And I started experiencing symptoms at a very early age. However, I didn't start gaining weight until a bit later in my teens, and specifically when I got pregnant with my children. That's kind of when it all really started to blow out of proportion. But the relationship with food and the eating and not being able to stop eating certain foods started at a very, very early age for me. And Well, I started very early to try to find ways. I was very health conscious and ate only very organic foods for the most part. I became a vegetarian and a vegan like 40, 50 years ago. So I've been there, done that. But the interesting thing was that no matter how healthy I was, I would never lose the problem with food and the overeating that I got caught up in. Then, of course, it came the cycles of restriction and restricting versus the binging and the eating, and the weight gain, constant weight gain. Now, this became my life from 16 to 48, and escalating every year to the point of me wanting to die. I felt when I was 48, I felt more than 60, and I thought that was really old. And now I am older than 60, and I feel 48, I tell you. But I really felt at the end of my life, my depression was really deep. My health had started to deteriorate. And so this was it was not a pleasant state of being, and both physically and specifically emotionally and mentally, this disease took me to my knees.
I saw a picture of you when you were in that period of your life, and it was we don't have a picture now, but it was quite. I mean, it's quite a shock. When we say that pictures tell 1,000 words, yours is definitely an example of that. So I don't know how tall you are, but what was your weight then compared to now? Like, just so that people can at least imagine.
Yeah. So we do here in Europe, we do kilos and centimeters. I'm 168 height. I think it is maybe like 5'6" or something like that. And my weight had become 123 kilos plus, and that is probably almost 300 pounds. And it was escalating. It was out of control, and I had been a really good dieter, I tell you. Yeah. Really? I was successful doing one diet after another, and I sometimes say I lost so much weight through those years that it is probably incredible. I wish I had the number for that. But then I will always lose it again. And, the yo-yo span would always be wider and wider. And at the end, I had no way of losing weight, restricting, or stopping eating. So I would say that I was in the last stages, a late stage food addict, at the point where I got to recovery, and finally I got supported with a sufficient food plan, and that would really take out all physical craving for me.
Before we get to that, what was your aha moment to know this is an addiction and I have to address it that way rather than weight? Because you'd already done the weight thing for years.
Yeah, and I had actually tried 12-step programs and was familiar with 12-step programs for years and years, but I never had really recovery from those programs. I believe because I never had a food plan suggested to me that was sufficient for me.
Okay.
And so I never experienced freedom from food until that I got that. And I remember when I got into that program that I was thinking, my mind.
Let me just for people to know. So that was a program that gave a specific food plan.
Yes, yes.
Because not all of them do. Just wanted so that people know that.
Right. Very, very strict food plan, one day at a time, no matter what. Mm-hmm. And 12 steps. And but I remember when I entered that, I thought, in spite of me wanting to die, I was so desperate and so to my knees. I was thinking, well, maybe I'm just a little bit of a food addict. Maybe, That's how sick my mind was. But I did go in, and I was willing to do this for a week at the beginning to prove them wrong, basically. But fortunately for me, it worked, and it is quite a few years, like 18 and a half year now, almost, that since I got that recovery for me.
Great. And you've maintained that recovery back to back since then. Yeah. And you have not gained any more weight. Like, the period of time that I've known you, you look exactly the same. There hasn't been a yo-yoing at all. So from that success, your own personal success, how did you make that move into a work situation?
Well, I used to be an opera singer and a music director and choir director, and I would do Broadway shows and, with my people and myself and so I had a career in music, but I knew that immediately when I got my recovery, I understood that finally, I had tools that people needed in this world. So I totally just changed my careers. I of course did whatever I could to get my recovery. It took me about 3 years to get stable recovery, and I did. And I did whatever was necessary because I did not want to go back to that place where I was. And to tell you the truth, Vera, I was scared to death that I would lose this freedom of being that I had found. Because it wasn't just losing the weight, it was a total makeover for myself as a personality. And so it was very precious to me. I also wanted to learn more, so I became interested in learning more about what recovery was, and I started looking around to see if there was any treatment for food addiction, because I had really not been exposed to that at all. And to my amazement, I did not hardly find anybody doing treatment, and it is still pretty scarce how the treatments, but it is growing fast. These years, we're in the early stages of producing food addiction professionals through the INFACT school. So slowly but surely, I found people, the pioneers in the field, like Acorn people, Phil and Mary, you, Vera, Bitten Jonsson, and Marty Lerner, and Teresa Wright, all of these people that came together in the Food Addiction Institute as professionals, wanting to advance and to give people the hope of recovery. And that's really where I feel my passion lies, is that I want to give people the hope of recovery.
So I know that you mentioned 2 or 3 things that you did. So one of them was the Food Addiction Institute. Can you tell us just a little bit about that and what your role was and became in that? The Food Addiction Institute. I would imagine 20 years ago, 18 years ago, it didn't exist. But just to give a paragraph description for people who don't know what that is.
Well, the Food Addiction Institute is a nonprofit organization set together by the pioneers in the field of food addiction treatment, basically, and science, to give education on and advancing the knowledge for the professionals, for people that suspect that they may have the food addiction, and to advance science. And we have come together and we're working in the last winter, for example, we're setting in applications to the APA and the DSM and the WHO WHO for the ICD, which are the codes for description of a disease. And we want them to take a look at food addiction seriously as a disease.
Yeah, for people who don't know what that is, these are all ventures to get the professional world, the psychologists and the psychiatrists and doctors, and basically the funders to believe that such a condition of food addiction exists. And the Food Addiction Institute has been crucial towards pushing that agenda.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great.
And I started there quite a few years back, and now in the last 2 years, I've served as the executive director, and we're pretty much advancing this agenda for us more and more, and getting more and more noticed for what we're doing and into the science and the professional field.
Okay, great. So what about your work? Because when I first met you, you were doing your own, even before INFACT, which I want to talk to you for sure. But you were doing your own treatment in Iceland. Can you describe how you got into that and what that looked like, just for people who are interested in what that would look like? Yeah.
Well, when I was getting my recovery, I knew that I wanted to open up a food addiction counseling center here in Iceland. And so I did. 3 years after I got abstinent, I opened up the doors to clients for the first time. And I had actually done at that point, I had re-educated myself in addiction counseling. And then soon after, I started a professional program with Acorn, Phil and Mary Fushi, Phil Verdell and Mary Fushi, to learn and study from people that have been doing treatment for years and years. And
just a quick 2-sentence, what is Acorn?
Acorn is a food dependency recovery services with an intensive food addiction treatment. And they developed a professional training, which is actually, INFACT has kind of taken over now, that was the first training in the world where professionals could go and learn and study how to treat food addiction. And so I went through that program, which really helped a lot for me to develop. And I developed here in Iceland an outpatient treatment. And at that point, I did not realize it was the first outpatient treatment for food addiction in the world. And today it's still active. And I think we've treated about 3,000 Icelandic people at the center. And we've had really, really good success with treating people at the MFM Center, which is the Food Addiction Treatment Center in Iceland.
Okay, and so from there, tell us about INFACT. Like what I remember, that's where I met you, is when you were doing MFM, and I guess it was also at Acorn. I don't know if I met you there, but heard about you, and was very interested in what you were doing. So I actually went over to Iceland, met you there, and there you were talking about, we need a program to teach people, because everyone's asking, what do I do? And we didn't know what to say other than Acorn, which was still pretty small compared to INFACT now. So tell us about INFACT.
Well, INFACT, I think I also realized in my mind that there was a real need for training for professionals. And in my heart, I understood that the professionals need to change the world. And of course, the food addicts do change the world because they have the need and they ask for what they need more and more. But the professional needs to know what the person needs. And so I had undergone addiction treatment program, and it was being supervised by the program director of that, and who is also the chair of the European Certification Board for Addiction Counselors. And he actually supported me in setting up material for professionals. And then I gathered together my colleagues from the Food Addiction Institute, the people in the pioneers with me to form the lecturing and the teaching about the food addiction, the science, the brain, and the therapeutic treatment thereof. And so 2016, we started the INFACT training.
Wow.
And we've been going strong ever since. And I think we're going to be certifying about the 80th student in the fall.
Wow.
We have a pretty full. I think we have 28 applications so far for the winter. So it's really, really growing, and people have been happy with it. And we've really tried to grow with every year in the science and the knowledge and in the teaching, real hands-on training and teaching people so that they can be supported to start doing this work within the professional field.
What does the program actually look like? Like, I guess it's mostly virtual right now. But yeah. Is there a locum part of it where you have to do some work in the community or write a paper? Or can you just explain a little bit in case somebody's interested?
Yeah, well, the base of it is the workbook, which is clinical guidelines on how to take a client from beginning to end in treatment, how to assess and screen, how to the intake process, how to deal with the food plans, how to deal with treatment for the mental obsession and trauma sections, on and on and on, relapses and the science of the whole thing, of course. And so we have a section on that, and people do need to pass final examination for that. Then they need to do a project, which is a project and present it for other students. It's a 30-minute project on how they see themselves work and use the knowledge that they've gathered so far. And we've had incredible, insightful projects and students go through so far. Now, we also have assignments as we go through the workbook. There are assignments, and there are student groups, and the student groups work the assignments together, and then they bring it to class, where we go over and study further in detail, and they get more supervision on what to do. So the sessions are both lectures from different teachers, like yourself, for example, who I love having every time, and some of the other incredible lecturers. So and it's virtual. So there is question and answers as well. And then there is teaching and training sessions, mostly with me, on treatment, on hands-on treatment, through the workbook and through the assignments that the students do through the 7-month course.
So it's a 7-month course. Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the end of the course, the person is equipped to be a food addiction counselor. Can they just open up their shingle and go for it?
Yeah, well, they wanted us to name it food addiction professionals rather than counselors. So and I think it kind of opens up the venue for people, because people are coming from different kind of professions and will be using the knowledge in very different ways. So some may just go into education for it. Others may be, like we've had quite a few physicians and nurses, will have the knowledge. And some are really starting their own company, basically, and treatments. And there's actually been quite a few of those as well. So you can, and there are requirements, of course, for doing that under supervision, as with any training in a new profession. But yes, you could do that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So it sounds like it's been very successful. So it's about 5 years old now, and you've sort of produced 80 people who have done the food addiction program so far, or 80 graduates. And
Yes.
I think you're doing it now. You were doing it once a year, but now you're doing it twice a year. Is that right?
Well, we did put start one in the spring, just to try it out,
Yeah.
and I don't think we'll do that again. It's a little too much,
Yeah, it's
but
pretty intensive
yeah,
for
yeah.
you.
But there was real ask for us to do that. But I think we will do this once a year from now on.
And the next one is coming up in the fall, I think you said. Is that right? Yeah,
Yes,
it's actually very soon. Yeah,
yes.
it is.
We're starting it in September.
So by the time people hear this talk, it's already happening. But you can sign up for next year.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting back to, so maybe with INFACT or your own personal experience, what would you say was the essential piece in working with people that was the thing that was essential, that was really important?
Well, there are two components that I see as essential in treatment for food addiction or sugar addiction. One is the biological part, to help a person get to a place of a food plan, an eating plan that works. And in my experience, there can be a big variety in that, for sure. But there are certain foods that need to be excluded. We just need to abstain from, and liquids. So that needs to be very clear, and that needs to also, we always need to start with that. And because once we do, people will experience the freedom of craving, and they will start understanding the difference between craving and hunger, which they think is hungry, but it is basically craving. And there's a totally different energy behind that. But then there is, for many that really do have the disease of addiction, there is more to it, and which is it is the mind coming from the blue that will tell you that you can now have one, and though that is not the experience before. And that part of the disease, the psychological part, can be affected by how you were brought up, if you had trauma in your life, or just how your personality basically was built up. How's your self-esteem? Do you have a lot of fear in your life? And as a consequence of all of this, we start using and behaving in ways that can be addictive. And once we start working with those addictions, we stop doing them, but then we need a way of dealing with the emotions that come up.
Which we all know is super big for food addicts.
Absolutely. And it is a tricky thing. And we for sure need real treatment for that if we're going to get through that, for sure.
So you're talking like trauma work, or just, I mean, is this where the person can stay with you or the food addiction counselor, professional, or should they then look for outside help elsewhere? I guess it opens the door to those possibilities, eh?
Yes, I think both. And I think if a person is lucky enough to have a qualified professional in the field, the professional can guide them on pretty well onto a way of recovery. But then outside help, like from 12-step programs, from Smart Recovery, or wherever, it is in my mind essential. There's the support, the element of support that I see is essential for a person because we can all stop eating sugar and those foods, but the problem is that we don't keep staying away from it. We always start doing it again. So obviously this is a chronic situation that we need to find a new way of living, basically, so that we can handle that and deal with what comes up and be prepared for whatever comes up in our lives and be able to deal with it without eating, without working too much or whatever we do.
What I really hear you saying, Esther, so eloquently, is that it's the food plan is number one. It's essential. We need to do that. But it's much more than the food plan and weight loss. Now we have to uncover all the artifice that built this up. And it's not enough to just stop at the foods. And now the hard work of staying stopped.
Yes.
And you're using an addiction model to do that. Is there something that you have found in your years since it sounds like you've been working for 15 years because you've been clean for 18 and got into it 3 years later, something that you've learned over the years that works or doesn't work in your training, in your actual work, clinical work?
Well, what I see is really does work is food plans that are a no matter what and with support. That's the base. The second component is a therapeutic approach to the 12 steps. And I have steadily used that as part of the treatment at the MFM treatment all those years. And so I see the benefit of doing that. And I see the benefit of it as people go forward into 12-step programs, having the knowledge of what it is that they will support them with and continuously help them maintain then the recovery that they start understanding in treatment. So that's really where I see the ones. Like when we did a questionnaire for the MFM treatment some years back, we have like 70% success in the first year, which is phenomenal. People stay abstinent, they lose the weight, and about 70% in the first year. Then people will start doing different things. The ones that go into 12-step programs, those are the long timers. That's about 30% that become long timers. And then we have like 30-40% of the people that are kind of chronically coming back and forth and getting stability.
Like they've kind of slipped and then they come back, and so it's starting to relapse. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And then they come into more and more recovery, hopefully. Then there is certain percentage that I think may not be food addicts, may just, needed to find a way of learning and understanding what they need to do, like drinkers that stop drinking because, it just is not working for their lives. So we have also 10 to 20% of people that I think come from that and find a way. And there's a lot of people I see as well that do that.
So that's sort of what you've seen over the years. That's actually a really nice way to break that down, of the 30, 30, 30 almost, that sort of thing.
Yes.
Have you found in your own work that you've had to be more flexible or made changes? Like what's changed for you over the years from where you started to where you are now?
Well, it is broader understanding for the clients. As I started pretty much coming from my recovery. I think a lot of two-hatters do that. Mm-hmm. And so more and more, as I went more into being a professional, I learned to distinguish more between professionalism and the two-hatter or a 12-step person. And so that has changed, and the understanding of the different food plans that people may need and are able to do. And the realization basically more and more how tricky this disease is and how deadly it is. And, just you have clients that have been doing really well, and then one day they come and they're gone. And and you don't remember, they don't see you, and you don't see them anymore. This gone. This is the severity of the disease. And it's very scary. But it is understanding that this will happen, and then once people wake up again, just to be there for them again. And I'm fortunate that a lot of people come back after relapses and slips within the recovery, because there is a treatment center here.
What about the people who say, I'm not interested in 12-step? And so you're saying there's the 30% who make it, and they tend to be the long timers, the 12-steppers. But what about there are lots, and you did mention, what did you say? You said a smart recovery. What about the people who don't want to do 12-step? Is there any hope as far as you're concerned?
Well, if you are in treatment and you teach them the principles, if they just learn the principles, they may not go and do anything in the 12-step programs, but they've learned the turnaround of it and the life-changing effects of it, whether they want it or not. And it is something that once people just go through it, and you can say it as 12 steps, or you can say, okay, this is treatment, And I have very seldom had people that did not want to try it in treatment. But they may never, ever have gone into any of it if it was walking into a 12-step program anywhere in the world.
But you would still insist that they have to do some sort of support group, though, some sort of support. It may not be 12-step, but it does need to be. You can't do this on your own.
Yes, I will.
In your mouth, you would, yeah. You agree with this, right?
Absolutely, and that, and I think it is like 3 components. It is the food plan. It is support, some kind of support, and it needs to be sufficient for you. It needs to come from a healthy place, however it is, and it needs to be real support, for when you need it, not just because you never know when you need it.
Yeah.
You never know. So somehow you need to have some kind of support that you can count on when you need it. And preventative is, I say, is always the best, because then, when you learn to just have some support, how it is, then it is just there when you need it.
Exactly. Like at 2:00 in the morning when you're having a night craving.
Yeah.
Or you're really upset about something and all you want to do is eat. Okay, yes. So just to close up with a little bit more about you, Esther, what do you feel is unique about your clinical contribution to the world of food addiction? I mean, I could go on and on about what I think, but what do you think?
Well,
what has Esther given us?
Well, I think the most precious gift is my abstinence. The most precious gift is my abstinence and my continued abstinence as a result of recovery work. And it kind of gives me the strength to keep going and supporting others, because now I know this works. It works for me. And I see people year after year see me and understand that there is this hope. So it is giving hope.
Yeah.
And the second thing is to go ahead and form a school where professionals can learn real tactics to deal with this disease. And so I think those 2 things are, what Esther has given to the world. I hope.
Absolutely. Thank you. Esther, what is next for you? I mean, you're right in the middle of things, so maybe next is a bit premature, but what's next for you in terms of your hopes on your agenda?
Well, my agenda is to keep advancing the INFACT school, and we've just launched a new project and are starting to cooperate with some scientists around the world, treatment for children, teens, and families.
Oh.
And so that is a project that I am pretty excited about, and I think is much, much needed. And I must say, with my friend Dr. Lustig, which I've been happy to get acquainted with and is one of INFACT lecturers, he always talks about we need to educate the children because they're going to inherit the world.
Uh-huh. Yes.
We're dying off pretty soon, but they're gonna be there,
That's right.
And I think that is very, very true. And for this, so much else. And I'm hoping in launching this project, and I'm hopeful with the people that are being interested in partaking in it, that might be something that will change the world as well.
Okay, so do you have, we always ask this question at the very end, we call it our signature question. What would you tell your younger self about food addiction or food addiction and recovery?
What would I you talk about if I was at my early years.
Like a younger self at some point, probably before.
Yeah.
When you were in the thick of your dieting.
Yeah. Oh my God. I think so. So I think so much of why I'm doing what I do in my life is because I had so hoped, I would have so wanted somebody to say to Esther when I was 16.
Yes.
When I was beginning the cycle of this, and when I thought just restricting and then binging was just the thing to do, that this was a real disease and needed treatment. And I do believe that I would have recovered earlier in life if I had that kind of help and information.
All right, Esther, thank you so much. I'm so delighted to do this talk. Esther is one of these pioneers that she's talked about. Esther, like you mentioned the word two-tatter. So, a lot of us who have had the disease and are in recovery are now working in the field. So that's the concept of two-hatter. Esther, you are the exemplar of that. So there you are with your 18 years of sobriety. And not only are you working in the field, but you've actually initiated a program, like you said, the first outpatient program. You haven't even talked about your political work in Iceland and actually getting to speak to the Prime Minister. And the latest incarnation of your work is the INFACT program, the first international program for food addiction professionals. You are a model of recovery. You are a fierce Icelandic woman who will make happen what she wants. Thank you so much, Esther, for this talk.
Thank you, Vera, for partaking in all of this.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us this week on Food Junkies, Recovery from Food Addiction. Make sure to join our Facebook group, Sugar Free for Life support group, I'm Sweet Enough. You can subscribe to our show in iTunes or Stitchers. That way you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Dr. Tarman's book, Food Junkies, which is available on Amazon. If you have any additional questions, both Molly and Clarissa are food addiction professionals and work one-on-one with clients. You can find their websites and email addresses in the show notes. Be sure to tune in every Friday when our new episodes drop. As Vera loves to say, the power is ours.